Hey everyone, Cleo here, and today we're going to be talking about my August TBR. In the month of August, I just want to take things easy, slow. In the month of July, this ended up happening naturally. I kind of overstretched myself in the month of May and in the month of June. I kind of had a reading slump in the middle there as well, and while I'm definitely out of that reading slump, I do still kind of feel like I put too much pressure on how much I wanted to finish and how much I wanted to proceed in all of my goals or in all of my video projects within the past few months. And so I kind of wanted to take a step back and be like, okay, for the month of August, we need a little bit of a breather, we need a little bit of lower expectations. And so I am reducing my TBR with an extra book. So while I had 5 books on there always, and that was already an achievable goal, I thought, I'm now going to be putting 4 on there, especially for the month of August. That is the case because the final week of the month I will also be on holiday, and I kind of want to have that be a full mood reading week. I don't want to go into that week with anything left on my TBR. I want to be able to choose from all of the books that I still have on my shelves and from everything that I have available on Script, everything at the library or whatever I want to read. I want to be able to pick it up in that moment and not feel like I'm neglecting my TBR. So just 4 books for this month. I don't know whether I'll be continuing with it like that in the months of September or in the remainder of the year. Potentially in September as well, because I'll also have a week of holiday in there. But in any case, we'll try it out in August and we'll see what ends up happening. But so there are 4 books on here that I am going to be reading normally within the first half to the first 3 weeks or something of the month, and so let me walk you through these books. So first up we have the Cosme Read. I am definitely still continuing on with the goals that I set myself out for this year, one of which being reading and rereading a lot of the Cosmere. So we are on another first time read, and that is Shadows of Self by Sanderson. So this is the second book in Mistborn Era 2. Before diving into Mistborn Era 2, you need to kind of know that it has a very different vibe than Mistborn Era 1. So Mistborn Era 1 is a lot more epic, high stakes, high scales, big world, and every action of the cast kind of has an implication for the whole world. This is much more smaller, more contained plot, more centered around the story arc of the characters themselves, though it does have an impact on the city that they take place in. It is more of a detective style story, so our main character is called Wax, and Wax is kind of somebody who at the beginning of the first book, he is struggling with giving up on his former life as a law keeper and becoming this sort of character of the leader of his house, the responsible person of his house. However, he is a law keeper at heart, and so certain cases definitely tempt him back into that life. And so I don't know whether this is very much going to be a sort of like single case structure where every book is a single case that is being delved into, or whether there is a lot more of an overarching plot or not. I have yet to finish the first one at this point in time, but I am definitely enjoying these characters a lot, but detective style stories aren't really my jam, and so I am definitely not like over the moon, adoring, in love with it, but it is a fun ride. I am enjoying myself with these books, so I will definitely be continuing on with that one, and they are a lot shorter than Mistborn Era 1 books as well, so that's also very much appreciated. Second book that relates to some of my reading goals is another fantasy book. So at the beginning of the year I set myself 3 series that I wanted to read, 3 series that I was going to spread out throughout the year, because I definitely wanted to make sure that some of those fantasy series that I'm always saying I want to read, that I was actually getting around to them. Normally I will have finished the Farseer trilogy in the month of July. It is the one that is most tentative at this point in time, because it would mean still reading 500 pages in one day in that book, so potentially I'll still have to finish it within the month of August. But the book that I should be starting is The Lies of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch. I don't know too much about this series. This is the Gentleman Bastard series. It's currently got 3 books in it, but the 4th one still needs to come out. I think the 4th one is the final one, but I could be wrong about that. It could be a series of 5 books, for example, or even more. This is a series that I mainly was intrigued about the series because it apparently has a beautiful friendship at its core. So it's often referred to in terms of that friendship. And so I definitely want more friendships within literature. Mistborn Era 2 has a great friendship at its core, for example, and I would very much love to read another book with that type of trope in it. Aside from that, I think it has got a heist plot in it, and that it's got sort of like pirate vibes, but I'm not entirely sure, don't quote me on that. I don't know too much about this, but I like going into fantasy without knowing too much. So if I know some of the tropes and some of the basics of the plot, that can already be enough for me to be intrigued. I do often see this on people's lists of sort of like their favorite fantasy reads, so that's also a reason why I'm intrigued about this one. This is then also the longest book that's going to be on my TBR, but I still think it is under 600 pages, or like just over. Yeah, it's over 600, it's 624 pages. So that's my longest on there, and all of the other ones are under 400 pages. So that's also a nice change from some of my other TBR so far this year. The two remaining books on this TBR are not fantasy reads. First up, we've got a historical fiction, literary fiction, I guess, which is Augustus by John Williams. I have read Stoner by John Williams like maybe even already a decade ago, and I absolutely loved it. And at that time I bought the two other books by John Williams that were in bookstore, which is Augustus and Butcher's Crossing, and I have yet to read both of these. I definitely need to change that. That is part of the reason why I want to go to that zero TBR. So when I do things like that, when I pick up books because I'm in love with one book by an author, I want to then be able to just immediately read the books that I'm picking up. But so Augustus is a fictionalization of the life of the Emperor Augustus. So he is like I think he is the first real emperor of the Roman Empire. And I'll just read the blurb because I don't know too much about this figure in history. So after the brutal murder of his great uncle Julius Caesar, Octavian, a shy and scholarly youth of 19, suddenly finds himself heir to the vast power of Rome. He is destined, despite vicious power struggles, bloody wars, and family strife, to transform his realm and become the greatest ruler the Western world had ever seen. Augustus Caesar, the first Roman emperor. Doesn't tell me a whole lot, but I definitely want to read more of John Williams. I do like Roman Empire stuff. I don't read it too often, but I did very much like that when I was in high school, for example. I always was fascinated with classes about the Roman Empire or, ancient Egypt. Like that type of time period was something that interested me a lot more than when we got closer and closer to modern times. So I'll definitely be interested to see what he does with this one. Stoner, I remember, had such great character work, and so I'm hoping to find this back in Augustus as well. And because it's the month of August, of course I was going to pick this book. When else to read it? And then the final book is a speculative one as well, but it is actually a classic as well, and that is The Last Man by Mary Shelley. So this is the second most well-known book by Mary Shelley, who is obviously most well known for her book Frankenstein. This is another speculative one, another sci-fi one. It is a post-apocalyptic story, and I don't really remember too much more about what it was, so I'll probably also just read you guys the blurb for this one. The Last Man is Mary Shelley's apocalyptic fantasy of the end of human civilization. Set in the late 21st century, the novel unfolds a somber and pessimistic vision of mankind confronting inevitable destruction. Interwoven with her futuristic theme, Mary Shelley incorporates idealized portraits of Shelley and Byron, yet rejects romanticism and its faith in art and nature. So I'm liking the sort of like apocalyptic setting of this book. I think that when it comes to Frankenstein, Mary Shelley did a very fascinating job with that, considering it is like the first of its kind, more or less. It's often referred to as the first sci-fi novel, and she did so many interesting things there when it came to the exploration of scientific discovery and how far should science go, how ethical is science, and the characterization of the monster. Is he really a monster, or are we the ones who are turning him into a monster, or who make him a monster by our interpretation of what he is, for example. So I thought Frankenstein was so fascinating in that sense. So I'm eager to see what she will do with an apocalyptic theme, with the sort of idea of the end of the world, and indeed as it's referring to a pessimistic vision of mankind and the way that mankind will react to the destruction of their world, their race. And it's very interesting because I didn't remember that it will also incorporate portraits of her husband, Shelley, so Percy by Shelley, and of Byron, who was a family friend. So yeah, I'm very intrigued to read this one, and you know, that cover has been staring at me because I think that this is gorgeous cover art. So the cover design is called The Wanderer Above the Sea of Clouds, which is a painting, it seems, by Caspar David Friedrich. So yeah, I really love that painting. I've seen it on multiple things, but I always associate it, of course, with this book because this book is the one that is on my shelves. And so another classic to get off of those shelves, because definitely if I want to be getting to a 0 TBR at some point, I also need to make progress on the classics. But so yeah, those are the 4 books that I want to be reading in the month of August. I think they're pretty doable to get done before the 20th of the month. We'll have to see, because I have a history of overestimating what I'm able to achieve. And definitely if I'm gonna have to carry over Assassin's Quests into this month, then I might still run into some problems, and I might not even finish that 4-book TBR. So who knows, we'll see, and but I'm definitely looking forward to that particular mix of books. I think it is nice to have a mix of fantasy and you know, more sort of like literary fiction, for example. I wanted this to be the year of fantasy, but as I've been reading a lot of fantasy, I've definitely noticed that yes, I love fantasy and I love the fact that I'm reading so much fantasy, but I also definitely need a lot of literary fiction in my life as well. But so yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Love to see you guys in a future one, and let me know if you've read any of these books, and wish me luck, because I hope that I won't be needing it, but you never know. Bye!